Maribel chose silence in the courthouse, while every eye in Mercy Crossing waited for her to deny the stolen money hidden beneath her apron. The judge asked who paid her to burn the land letters. The sheriff called her an orphan stray with quick fingers. In the back row, a terrified boy shook his head, begging her not to speak, because one word could clear Mara and hang him. Then Jonas Whitaker, a widowed homesteader with grief carved into his face, rose before the gavel fell. He had no reason to trust the quiet cook, but he stepped between Mara and the town's hunger for blame. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from. Leave your country name in the comments below. And if you love stories about courage, loyalty, and community, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. The courthouse smelled of wet wool, boot leather, and old dust stirred by too many angry feet. Outside, a hard spring wind dragged Prairie grit along the boardwalks of Mercy Crossing, rattling shutters and snapping the flags above the land office. A train whistle sounded far beyond town, mournful and thin, as if even the railroad knew something decent was being buried that morning. Maribel stood beside the witness rail, with flowers still caught beneath one toenail. She had come to the courthouse before dawn to cook for the county meeting. Biscuits, salt pork, black coffee, apple preserves if the jar held out. She had expected aching feet and sharp words from the courthouse wives. She had not expected Sheriff Russ to pull a canvas money pouch from beneath the folded apron in her basket. The pouch had belonged to the church relief fund. Inside it were $93 meant for 3 families who had lost barns to lightning, and 2 sealed letters from the territorial land office, both slit open, both smelling faintly of smoke. One letter carried the name Jonas Whitaker. That was why he had come. He stood in the second row, taller than most men in the room, his shoulders squared as if he had learned to take bad news without bending. A dark coat hung over his work shirt, but dust clung to his cuffs and the knees of his trousers. His hands were scarred from rope, ace, and winter. Beside him sat a little girl with 2 brown braids and a face too solemn for 8 years old. Lucy Whitaker held her father's sleeve with both hands. Mara had fed them twice at the depot eating house. Once when a snowstorm had stranded Jonas and his daughter in town. Once when their wagon wheel cracked and they had waited past midnight for the blacksmith. Lucy had whispered, "Thank you," over a bowl of stew, and Jonas had left 2 pennies more than the bill required. Mara remembered because people with little money did not tip unless gratitude had cost them something. Now his land letter lay on the judge's desk, torn and stained. Judge Hollis leaned forward, spectacles low on his nose. "Miss Bell, you will answer plain. Who gave you these letters?" Mara's throat moved. No sound came. A murmur swept the benches. "She knows," someone whispered. "Course she knows. Girls like that always know more than they say." Sheriff Rusk stood with his thumbs hooked in his belt, the silver star on his vest polished brighter than his conscience. "Found the pouch in her basket myself, Judge. She was slipping out the kitchen door when I stopped her. I was taking scraps to the alley," Mara said quietly. The sheriff smiled. "For the rats?" A few men laughed. Mara looked toward the back row. Toby Crane sat half hidden behind the stovepipe, his cap crushed in both hands. He was 13, might be 14, though hunger had kept him small. A bruise purpled one cheek. When Mara's eyes met his, he shook his head once, hard and desperate. "Don't." She had known Toby since winter, when he began sleeping near the livery and stealing crusts from the eating house barrel. He had no mother, no father, anyone claims, just a little sister named Pearl who coughed through the nights in a room behind the abandoned print shop. Mara had found them there and started bringing food. 2 nights ago, Toby had come to her shaking so hard he could barely stand. "They made me take the key, Miss Mara." "Who?" He would not say at first. Then he had said only one name: Galt. Reuben Galt owned the Palace Saloon, half the gambling debts in town, and enough secrets to buy silence from men who thought themselves honest. He had told Toby that if the boy spoke, Pearl would disappear downriver with a freight crew by morning, so Mara had promised she would keep him safe. She had not known that promise would end with her standing accused before the whole town. Judge Hollis tapped the burned letter with one finger. This court has no patience for stubbornness. Mr. Whitaker's claim was nearly forfeited because this notice never reached him. The church money is missing. These papers were found with you. If you were paid to carry them, say so. If another hand placed them in your basket, name that hand. Mara closed her eyes. She saw Toby's shaking fingers. She saw Pearl asleep under a torn quilt. She saw herself at 10 years old, left at a charity home in St. Joseph with a tin cup, a cracked comb, and nobody coming back. She had learned early that people without names worth defending survived by becoming useful and quiet. A quiet girl could hear danger coming. A quiet girl could hide a smaller child behind her. I have nothing to say, Mara whispered. The judge sat back. The room erupted. Jonas Whitaker did not move at first. His jaw tightened, and Mara expected to see disgust in his eyes. Why not? His land, his daughter's home, the few acres he had broken with his own hands, had nearly been stolen through those missing letters. If anyone had a right to hate her, it was him. Then Lucy tugged his sleeve and whispered something. Jonas looked down at his child. Mara did not hear the words, but she saw their effect. Something in his face shifted, not softening exactly, but awakening. Sheriff Rusk reached for Mara's arm. Jail will loosen her tongue. Mara flinched before she could stop herself. Jonas saw it. Take your hand off her, he said. The room quieted so sharply the wind outside seemed louder. Sheriff Rusk turned. This ain't your matter, Whitaker. My name is on that letter. Then you ought to want her locked up. I want the truth. So do we. She refuses to speak. Jonas stepped into the aisle. Refusing to speak is not proof of stealing. No, but stolen money in her basket is, and if somebody put it there. The sheriff's smile thinned. You calling me careless? I am saying a basket left in a courthouse kitchen could be touched by anyone with legs and a reason. Judge Hollis lifted a hand. Mr. Whitaker, sit down. I'll stand. Mara stared at him. No man had ever stood for her before unless he wanted payment in return. Jonas removed a folded paper from his coat. I was coming to file a complaint. My land notices have gone missing twice. My fence was cut last month. 3 calves were driven onto the road. Now the letter proving my extension turns up burned in a cook's basket along with church money. That is not theft. That is a pattern. A voice from the side bench said, or she's part of it. Mara knew that voice. Reuben Galt lounged near the window in a fine brown coat. His black hair oil smooth, his boots too clean for a working man. His eyes rested on Mara with the ease of a man watching a trap close. She worked at my saloon kitchen once, Galt said. Briefly, I dismissed her for taking sugar. That's a lie, Mara said before she could stop herself. Galt's mouth curved. The judge looked at her. So you can speak after all. Heat rose in Mara's face. Jonas looked from Galt to Mara, and some understanding passed through his eyes. Not the full truth, but enough to make him wary. I'll postpone, Jonas said. Gasps moved through the room. Mara turned to him. No, he did not look away from the judge. How much? Judge Hollis hesitated. Mr. Whitaker, this woman is accused in a matter involving your own claim, and until trial, she is not convicted. Sheriff Rusk scoffed. You want to take an accused thief under your roof? You think that looks proper? Jonas' voice dropped. I have a daughter, a hired hand, and my late wife's aunt staying until summer. My roof is not your concern. Mara's heart pounded. Mr. Whitaker, please don't at that. He turned to her. His eyes were gray, steady, and tired in a way she understood. Grief had lived in him long enough to unpack its belongings. Did you steal my letter? he asked. The courtroom held its breath. Mara could not say who had, but she could answer that. No. Did you steal that money? No. Then I will not watch them bury you. Because silence suits somebody else. Toby made a small sound in the back row. Mara did not turn. The judge named the bond. Jonas paid with money he had brought for seed, nails, and a new plow blade. Mara knew it by the way his fingers paused before handing it over. When the courthouse doors opened, cold daylight struck her face. The town waited outside like a second jury. Women gathered near the church steps. Men leaned beneath the awning of the mercantile. A pair of boys whispered and pointed. Mara walked down between them with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles ached. Jonas walked beside her, not touching, not crowding, simply there. That was enough to make the whispers sharpen. Widower must be lonely. Shall rob him blind. His poor little girl. Mara stopped at the edge of the boardwalk. You should take back the bond. No. You don't know what they'll say. I know what they already say. I am not worth your trouble. His gaze moved over her face, and for the first time that morning, something like anger showed there. Not at her, for her. Miss Bell, he said. That sounds like something somebody taught you. It does not make it true. Before Mara could answer, Lucy slipped from behind her father and held out a biscuit wrapped in a napkin. You did not eat breakfast, the child said. Mara looked at the biscuit, then at the girl, then at the courthouse where men with polished badges and clean collars had decided her silence was guilt. Her eyes burned, but she did not cry. She took the biscuit as if it were a holy thing. Jonas Whitaker's homestead lay 12 miles north of Mercy Crossing, where the prairie rolled in long tawny waves and the sky seemed large enough to swallow every sorrow a person carried. The ride out was quiet. Mara sat on the wagon bench with Lucy between her and Jonas. Behind them, a sack of flour, a box of coffee, and 2 bundles of cloth shifted with every rut. Jonas had spent nearly all his town money on the bond, but he had still bought supplies, measuring each coin before parting with it. Mara watched without comment, guilt pressing beneath her ribs. A woman like her knew the sound of sacrifice. It sounded like a man saying nothing while giving up what he needed. Halfway across the open road, Lucy fell asleep against Mara's shoulder. The child was light and warm, her braids smelling faintly of smoke and lavender soap. Mara kept still so she would not wake her. Jonas noticed. You've handled children, he said. I've handled hunger, Mara answered. Children usually come with it. He studied the road ahead. You were raised in an orphan home. Some. I was placed out twice. Sent back once. Ran from the second place. Why? Mara looked over the prairie, where a hawk circled above the dry grass. Some questions are just doors to room nobody wants to enter. Jonas accepted that. Most men did not. Most pushed until silence became a wall and then blamed her for building it. After a while he said, My wife, Eliza, died 3 winters ago. Mara had heard. Everyone had. A fever after childbirth, some said. A wagon accident, said others. In towns like Mercy Crossing, truth wore many borrowed coats. I'm sorry, Mara said. She made this place gentle, Jonas said. Without her, it's just work and weather. Lucy stirred but did not wake. Mara glanced at the child. Not just. His hands tightened on the reins. They reached the homestead near sundown. It was smaller than Mara expected and stronger. A sod-roof cabin had been built onto a frame room with a real glass window facing east. A barn leaned slightly but held firm. A chicken yard sat behind a low fence. Beyond it spread fields not yet fully broken, and farther still, a creek lined with cottonwoods shone like dull silver in the evening light. A woman stood on the porch with a rifle in one hand and a shawl around her shoulders. She was thin, sharp-faced, and gray-haired, with eyes that measured Mara in one glance and found her lacking. Aunt Edith, Jonas called. "This is Miss Bell." Edith Whitcomb did not lower the rifle. "I heard what happened in town. I expect most people have. You brought scandal home in the wagon with your daughter sitting beside it." Lucy woke Aunt Edith. The old woman's face softened for the child, but only for a breath. "Go inside, Pat." Jonas helped Lucy down, then turned to Mara. "You can take the small room off the kitchen. It was for storage, but there's a cot." Edith stepped aside as Lucy passed, then blocked the doorway again. "Jonas, a word?" "Lauder." Now Mara lifted her basket. "He can sleep in the barn?" "No," Jonas said. "It's fine." "It is not." Edith's mouth tightened. "The town will say you've lost your senses. The town was never fond of them." "This is not humor." Eliza's memory. Jonas went still. Mara saw the wound before the words landed. Edith saw it too. But grief often made people cruelest where they had once loved most. "Eliza's memory," Jonas said slowly, "is not so fragile that feeding a woman awaiting trial will break it." Edith flushed. "You think this is charity. It is vanity. You want to prove you can save what the town condemns because you could not save. That is enough." Silence fell hard. Mara back from the porch. "I should go." Jonas turned. "You will not walk 12 miles with night coming." "I've walked farther. That does not recommend doing it again." Before Mara could argue, a sound cracked across the prairie. A rifle shot. The chickens exploded into frantic wing. Lucy screamed from inside the cabin. Jonas grabbed Mara by the arm and pulled her down behind the wagon. A second shot struck the water barrel, punching a hole through the staves. Water burst out and ran dark over the dirt. Jonas snatched the rifle from Edith. Inside, Mara crouched low, heart hammering. Out beyond the barn, dust lifted near the cottonwoods. A rider wheeled his horse and vanished into the brush. Jonas fired once, not to hit, but to warn. Then the prairie swallowed the sound. Edith clutched Lucy in the doorway. Was that for her? Mara knew the answer before anyone said it. A scrap of paper had been pinned to the wagon seat by the first bullet. Jonas pulled it free. Mara saw the words from where she crouched. "Send the cook back, or next time we aim lower." Edith crossed herself. Lucy began to cry. Jonas looked at Mara and his expression changed from doubt to something harder. "Who wants you afraid?" he asked. Mara rose slowly. "No one. Do not lie to me. I am trying not to." "That is not the same as truth." "No," she whispered. "It is not." He folded the paper and put it in his pocket. "Then we start there." That night Mara cooked because work steadied her hands. The kitchen was small, with a black stove, iron pans and shelves lined with jars Eliza had labeled in a graceful hand. Beans, salt, dried apples, feverfew. Mara touched none of those jars without asking. A dead woman's kitchen was not empty. It was full of habits and ghosts. She made cornmeal cakes, fried potatoes, and gravy from the last of the salt pork. Edith refused to praise it, which was nearly praise enough. Lucy ate 2 cakes. Jonas ate quietly, his eyes moving to the window whenever the wind struck the glass. After supper, while Edith put Lucy to bed, Jonas found Mara at the wash basin. "You knew that warning would come," he said. Mara wrung water from a cloth. "I feared it might." "Go." Her hands stopped. The silence answered too much. Jonas leaned against the doorframe. "I have had trouble since refusing to sell my North Acres." Galt offered twice. "Then my letters went missing. Then my fence was cut. Then my claim notice turned up in your basket." Mara whispered. "He wants your land. He wants the creek. Railroad men have been surveying west of here. If a spur comes through, that creek matters." Mara closed her eyes. "I did not know, but you knew Galt was part of it." I knew enough to be afraid for yourself. She thought of Toby's bruised face, Pearl's cough, a saloon owner's smile. No, she said. Jonas heard that too. Outside, the wind pressed against the cabin walls. The lantern flame bent and straightened, bent and straightened. You cannot protect someone by letting wolves eat you first, he said. Mara looked at him then. That depends on how hungry the wolves are. Morning came pale and cold, with frost silvering the fence rails and the rooster announcing life, as if no bullet had split the night before. Mara rose before the others. In every place she had ever lived, rising first had been a kind of armor. It gave her time to learn the shape of the day, before the day demanded anything of her. She stirred the stove, carried ash outside, drew water from the pump, and found the bread crock nearly empty. By sunrise the cabin smelled of coffee and fresh biscuits. Lucy came in, rubbing her eyes. She stopped when she saw Mara at the table kneading dough. Mama used to sing when she made bread, Lucy said. Mara's hands slowed. What did she sing? I don't remember all of it. Hum what you remember. Lucy hummed 3 uncertain notes. Mara listened, then caught the tune and carried it softly under her breath. It was an old hymn, one she had heard in charity homes and church kitchens, sung by women who could make sorrow sound like endurance. Lucy's face brightened. That's it. From the doorway Jonas watched. Mara pretended not to notice. The day turned hard by mid-morning. One of the milk cows had tangled herself in wire near the creek. Jonas and his hired hand, Caleb Doss, rode out to free her, but the animal panicked as they came close, twisting the wire tighter around her hind leg. Mara heard the commotion from the yard and ran before anyone called. Edith shouted after her, "That is not kitchen work." Mara kept running. At the creek, Jonas was trying to calm the cow while Caleb cut wire. The cow lurched, nearly driving a hoof into Caleb's chest. Mara stepped into the mud, took off her shawl, and moved toward the animal's head. Jonas snapped, "Stay back. I know cows shall kick, not if she can see kindness first. That is not a method. It is when no one has rope enough." Mara began speaking low, nonsense mostly, the kind of soft kitchen talk used for frightened children and burnt hands. She let the cow smell the shawl, then draped it over the animal's eyes. The cow shuddered but still. Jonas stared. "Cut now," Mara said. Caleb cut. The wire fell loose. When the cow was free, Jonas led her back from the creek, and Mara sank onto a rock, mud up to her ankles, skirt torn, breathing hard. Caleb grinned. "Miss Bell, I take back half what I heard." "Only half?" she asked. "Man needs room to improve." Jonas did not smile, but his eyes warmed. "Where did you learn that?" "Farm, near Abilene. They took orphan girls for labor when the wheat came in. Were they kind?" Mara looked at the torn hem of her dress. "They own cows." That was answer enough. As days passed, the homestead began to take her in despite itself. She learned the creak of the barn door, the stubbornness of the pump handle, the way Lucy liked her eggs broken and stirred. She learned that Jonas checked the north fence at dusk, even when exhausted, and that he paused by a small cottonwood near the creek each time he rode past. On the third evening, Lucy told her that tree was where Eliza had liked to sit in summer. Mara did not go near it after that. Trust came not as a grand thing, but as a series of small permissions. Jonas let her measure the flour without watching. Edith allowed her to use Eliza's blue mixing bowl, though she hovered in the doorway like a guard at a bank. Lucy asked Mara to braid her hair, and Mara, who had spent her life ready to run, began leaving small pieces of herself behind by accident. A ribbon on a peg, a mended glove near the stove. A laugh she did not call back in time. One afternoon, a storm rolled over the prairie without warning. The sky turned greenish and low. Wind swept across the grass, flattening it in waves. Jonas and Caleb were 3 fields out, trying to bring in a loose team. Edith was in bed with one of her headaches. Lucy had gone to gather eggs. Mara heard the child scream just as thunder broke. She ran to the chicken yard and found Lucy frozen beside the fence, staring toward the barn. A lantern had tipped in the tack room, likely knocked by the wind through an unlatched shutter. Flames crawled up a pile of dry feed sacks. The barn. Myra grabbed a water bucket, then stopped. One bucket would do nothing. Lucy, ring the dinner bell. The girl sobbed. I can't. Yes, you can. Pull with both hands. Now. Myra ran into the smoke. Horses screamed in their stalls. Heat struck her face. She pulled the latch on the first stall, then the second. Smoke burned her eyes. She could hear the dinner bell clanging outside, wild and uneven. The third horse reared, refusing the door. Myra coughed, choking. She took a feed sack, slapped at sparks near the stall, then reached for the halter. A beam cracked overhead. Strong arms seized her from behind. Jonas dragged her backward out of the barn, just as part of the tack room roof collapsed in a rush of flame and sparks. Myra fought him. The horse, Caleb's got him. I can get, you are out. Rain hit then, sudden and hard, drumming on the roof, hissing against fire. Jonas kept hold of Myra, even after they were clear. She turned in his grip, furious and coughing. You had no right. His face was ashen beneath the soot. No right to keep you alive. I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was doing. And so did Eliza. The words fell between them like a dropped blade. Myra went still. Jonas released her at once, turning away as if the confession had cost him balance. Rain poured over them. Flames shrank beneath the storm. Lucy clung to Edith on the porch, crying. Myra wiped soot from her mouth. The fire. Jonas stared at the barn. Wagon lantern. Winter road. Wheels struck a rut. She went back for Lucy's blanket, because Lucy would not sleep without it. I was 20 steps away. Myra's anger left her. I am sorry, she said. He gave a bitter laugh with no humor in it. People say that when there is nothing else, sometimes there is nothing else. He looked at her then. Rain running down his face like grief finally made visible. I could not pull her out, he said. I tried, I hear it still. Myra wanted to touch his arm. She did not. Instead, she stood beside him in the rain until the fire died. That evening, after Lucy slept and Edith retired, Myra found Jonas in the barn, standing among smoke-blackened beams. I did not steal your letter, she said. He turned. I know. I did not burn it. I know. But I know who made Toby take the courthouse key. Jonas came closer, careful, as if one wrong step might send her back into silence. Toby is the boy from court? Myra nodded. Galt has his sister, not locked in chains, not where anyone can point and say so. But she is sick, and he controls the doctor, bill, the room, the food. Toby does what he is told because Pearl cannot run. And Galt told him to put the pouch in your basket. I think so. Toby would not tell me all. He was too scared. Why protect him at the courthouse? Because I know what happens to children nobody claims. Jonas' eyes held hers. For a moment, the barn, the smoke, the town, the accusations all seemed to fall away. There was only the ache of two people who had each failed to save someone once and could not bear to fail again. Jonas said quietly, Then we claim him. Myra swallowed. It is not that simple, no, he said. But most things worth doing are not. The first proof arrived in a flour sack. 3 days after the barn fire, Caleb Doss rode in from town with supplies tied behind his saddle and a grim look beneath his hat. He waited until Lucy was inside before handing Jonas a folded scrap. Boy at the livery slipped this into my feed order. Caleb said, told me not to open it, said it was for Miss Bell. Myra took it with cold fingers. The message was written in pencil, the letters uneven. Miss Myra, I did wrong. He says if you talk, Pearl goes on the 9 o'clock freight. He has a book in the red room. It has names. I saw your name too, but not for stealing. I am sorry. T. Jonas read it over her shoulder. A book? He asked. Mara folded the paper. Gal keeps a ledger. Of debts, bribes, favors. Men sign more than they understand in the red room. Caleb Doss spat into the dirt. Half the county owes that devil something. Jonas looked toward the north, where his creek cut through the land. And my name is in it. Mara nodded. Probably. Edith, who had listened from the porch, stepped down slowly. Bah. If that ledger exists, you take it to the judge. First we have to get it, Jonas said. You will not go into that saloon with this woman. Mara stiffened. Edith's eyes flashed. Do not mistake me. I am not protecting your pride, Miss Bell. I am protecting Lucy's father from being shot over a woman who still refuses to tell the whole truth, Jonas said. Edith, no. You have looked at her as if suffering makes a soul pure. It does not. Some suffering teaches people to survive at any cost. Myra met the old woman's gaze. You are right, the answer startled Edith. Myra continued. Suffering can make a person lie, steal, run. Keep quiet when speaking would be braver. I have done some of those things. Not the theft they accused me of, but enough. Edith's expression shifted, though not toward kindness yet. I am not pure, Mara said. She trying to keep a boy alive. And if keeping him alive ruins Jonas? Mara had no answer. That was the question that had gnawed at her since the courthouse. Silence was not clean just because love stood behind it. A secret could shield one person and wound another. Jonas had paid bond with seed money. Lucy heard whispers. Edith watched her dead niece's home fill with danger. Myra had told herself she was the only one falling, but that was no longer true. That night, Mercy Crossing held a church supper to raise more relief funds. Myra did not intend to go, but Jonas said the guilty liked empty rooms and easy stories, so they went. The church hall glowed with lanterns and judgment. Long tables sagged under pies, beans, ham, and coffee. Women stopped speaking when Myra entered. Men looked away, then looked back when they thought she would not notice. Jonas walked beside her with Lucy holding his hand. Reuben Gall stood near the stove, laughing with the sheriff. He raised his cup when he saw Myra. Miss Bell, I hear country air suits accused women. Jonas' voice was mild. Careful, Gall, your manners are showing. The room hushed. Gall smiled. Whitaker, you have always mistaken stubbornness for dignity, and you have always mistaken fear for respect. Sheriff Russ stepped between them. No trouble in church, then leave, Caleb Doss muttered. A few men coughed to high laughter. For one brief moment, Myra saw that Galt was not beloved. He was endured. That was different. A man endured could fall if enough people stopped pretending his shadow was shelter. Then Mrs. Pritchard, the minister's wife, approached with a collection plate. She paused before Myra. I suppose you will not be contributing, she said. Myra's face warmed. Lucy frowned. That is unkind. Mrs. Pritchard blinked. Child, this is grown business. Myra reached into her pocket. She had one coin, a nickel. Jonas had paid her for mending grain sacks, though she had refused wages. She placed it on the plate. Mrs. Pritchard stared. Is that wise, considering the missing fund? The hall went still. Myra's hands curled. Jonas stepped forward, but Myra spoke first. If my coin troubles you, give it to someone hungry before it learns wickedness from the rest. A shocked silence followed. Then Caleb Doss barked a laugh. Even Jonas' mouth twitched. Mrs. Pritchard swept away, offended beyond measure. But The small victory died when Toby appeared at the side door. His eyes found Maras across the room. Then he bolted. Mara moved after him without thinking. Jonas followed. They found Toby behind the church, bent over, breathing hard. "Pearl's gone," he gasped. Mara gripped his shoulders. "What do you mean gone?" Galt put her on a wagon. "Said she's safe if I do one more job." Jonas crouched. "What job?" Toby's face crumpled. Behind them, a floorboard creaked. Sheriff Russ stepped from the shadows with his pistol drawn. "This one," the sheriff said. Galt appeared beside him, no smile now. "The boy will swear Mara Bell paid him to steal the key, and Jonas Whitaker paid her to ruin his own claim for sympathy before the railroad hearing." Jonas rose slowly. "That does not even make sense." "It does if folks want it to." Mara pulled Toby behind her. Galt's eyes hardened. "You should have stayed quiet, Cook." He eyed it. "Not well enough?" He nodded to the sheriff. Russ lifted his pistol toward Toby. "Boy comes with us." Mara stepped in front of the gun. "No," she said. Jonas moved faster than anyone expected. He struck the sheriff's wrist upward just as the pistol fired. The shot cracked into the church bell above them. Women screamed inside. Horses reared along the rail. Galt lunged for Mara, but Caleb Doss came around the corner and drove him back with a fence rail. For 10 wild seconds, the churchyard became chaos. Toby ran. Mara did not. She saw Galt turn his pistol toward the fleeing boy. She threw herself at his arm. The gun fired. Pain tore across Mara's side. Hot and bright, she hit the ground hard. Jonas shouted her name. The last thing she saw before the lantern light blurred was his face above hers. Terrified in a way no man could counterfeit. "Stay with me," he said, pressing his hand against the blood at her ribs. "Mara, do you hear me? You do not get to fall now." She tried to answer. For once, silence took her without permission. Mara awoke to the sound of rain on a roof and a child praying badly. Lucy sat beside the bed, eyes squeezed shut, hands folded tight. "Dear Lord, please do not let Miss Mara die, because Papa will get that face again. And Aunt Edith will be cross because she does not know how to be scared without scolding. Amen." Mara made a small sound. Lucy's eyes flew open. "Bah!" Footstep crossed the room. Jonas appeared, unshaven, hollow-eyed, alive with relief. He knelt beside the bed as if his legs had given out. "You are at Doc Hensley's," he said. "Bullet grazed your ribs. Lost blood. Fever came and went." Mara swallowed. "Toby, safe? Pearl?" His face changed. Mara tried to sit up. Jonas gently held her shoulder. "Pearl is alive." Caleb found the wagon trail east. Galt's men took her toward Lockin's Ford. "Toby says Gall keeps a shack there for freight deals. Then go. I am not leaving you. You must." Caleb went for help. "Galt will move her." Jonas looked toward the rain-streaked window. For the first time since Mara had known him, he looked torn in two. She understood. Lucy had nearly lost him in that churchyard. Edith would beg him not to ride into outlaw ground. His land hearing was the next morning. If he missed it, Gall's forged claim might stand. Everything he had built sat on the edge of one decision. Mara had spent her life believing people chose themselves when the cost grew high enough. Jonas proved her wrong by reaching for his hat. "I'll bring her home," he said. Mara caught his sleeve. "Not alone. You can barely breathe. I know Galt's places. I cooked in that saloon. I heard Rout's name. Men talk around kitchen girls as if stoves have ears and women do not. You are wounded, and you are stubborn. That makes us equally foolish." A shadow filled the doorway. Edith stood there with a folded dress over one arm and a rifle in the other. "For pity's sake," she said, "at least change out of that bloody shirt before you both martyr yourselves." Mara stared. Edith set the dress on the chair. It was Eliza's. Brown wool, practical. She would haunt me if I let you ride in torn calico. Jonas looked at his aunt by marriage. Edith sniffed. Do not make a sermon of it. Mara's voice came rough. Why? The older woman's face tightened. Because Lucy prayed for you. Because Jonas looks less dead when you are in the room. Because I have been angry at the wrong person for 3 years and I am tired. It was not an apology, but it was a door opening. Mara took it. They left before dawn under rain-heavy clouds. Jonas rode a black gelding named Testament. Mara rode behind Caleb Doss in the wagon for the first mile, then insisted on a saddle when the ruts grew deep. Every breath hurt, every hoofbeat tugged fire through her side. She said nothing because pain was only pain, and Pearl was a child. At Larkin's Ford, the river ran swollen and brown. The shack stood beyond a cottonwood bend, smoke curling from its chimney. 2 horses were tied outside. A freight wagon waited under a tarp. Jonas studied the place from behind the brush. 2 men visible. Y'all will have one inside, Mara whispered. Might be more. Caleb checked his rifle. We wait for county men. Mara shook her head. By then she'll be gone. Jonas looked at her. What are you thinking? That I spend my whole life being overlooked, Mara. I can get close. No. Listen to me. Men like God do not see servants until soup is cold or secrets are missing. I can go to the door and say Toby sent me to make the exchange. What exchange? Me, Jonas' face went hard. No. If he wants me quiet, let him think I am offering it. No, you asked me not to let wolves eat me first. I heard you, but sometimes you have to draw them where the rifle can see. Jonas leaned close. Do not ask me to watch you walk into that shack. I am not asking you to watch. I am asking you to trust me. That struck deeper. Trust was not the soft feeling songs made of it. Trust was terror with its hands open. Jonas closed his eyes once. Then he nodded. Mara walked toward the shack with her hands visible and her heart beating against the bandage at her ribs. Rain dampened her hair. Mud grabbed at her boots. One of the guards lifted his rifle. Stop there. I came for Gall. The door opened before the man answered. Reuben Gall stepped onto the threshold. Neat as Sunday despite the mud. Well, if it isn't the silent cook risen from the dead, I'll sign whatever statement you want, Mara said. I say I stole the key, the money, the letters. I'll say Jonas Whitaker knew. Let Pearl go. Gall descended 1 step. Noble, stupid, but noble. I want to see her first. He studied her, then laughed softly. You always did have a spine under that flower. He gestured. One guard opened the shack door wider. Pearl Crane sat aside on a crate, wrapped in a blanket, pale but breathing. Her eyes widened when she saw Mara. Mara's knees nearly weakened with relief. Let her walk out, Mara said. After you sign. Now, Gall's smile disappeared. You are in no position. A rifle shot cracked from the cottonwoods. The guard near the horses dropped his gun and grabbed his shoulder. Caleb's voice boomed from the brush. Next one takes the hat under it. Jonas came from the other side. Pistol steady. Gall seized Mara, dragging her against him. Pain exploded through her side. His revolver pressed beneath her jaw. I will kill her, he shouted. Jonas stopped. Everything stopped. Rain fell between them in silver lines. Mara could feel Galt's breath at her ear. Tell him to drop it. Jonas' eyes locked on hers. She saw fear there, not weakness, fear harnessed in hell. Galt snarled. Tell him. Mara looked at Jonas and did what she had not done in the courthouse. She spoke the truth. Toby took the key because Galt threatened Pearl. Sheriff Russ planted the pouch. The land letters are in Galt's red ledger. He wants the creek for the railroad spur. He shot at your wagon. He burned your notice. He paid men to cut your fence. Galt jerked the pistol harder against her jaw. Shut up. No, Mara said. and her voice grew stronger. I chose silence once because a child was in danger. I will not give you silence now. Galt cocked the hammer. A small figure moved behind him. Pearl, thin and shaking, lifted the iron stove poker with both hands and struck Galt behind the knee. He buckled with a cry. Mara twisted away as Jonas fired. The bullet struck Galt's pistol from his hand. Caleb and the county deputy, arriving breathless through the brush, rushed the shack. Within seconds, Galt was in the mud with his wrists bound, cursing every soul present. Jonas reached Mara just as her strength failed. He caught her before she hit the ground. For a moment, she was back in the courthouse, falling beneath the weight of every name the town had given her. But this time, arms held her. This time, someone refused to let the fall finish. She looked up at Jonas through rain and pain. Pearl, safe, he said. Toby, waiting. Your land hearing. He gave a short laugh, half relief, half disbelief. Miss Bell, I believe we just found better evidence than a hearing. Behind them, Caleb pulled a red leather ledger from beneath a loose floorboard. Inside were names, payments, forged marks, railroad notes, and 2 folded letters addressed to Jonas Whitaker. One still held the seal of the Territorial Land Office. Mercy Crossing changed its mind slowly, and not with grace. The first day, people said Reuben Galt had been misunderstood. The second day, Sheriff Russ disappeared, and people said perhaps he had gone to fetch higher authority. The third day, a county marshal found him drunk in a hay shed 6 miles south with $200 sewn into his coat lining and a train ticket to Denver. After that, folks began remembering they had never trusted him. Judge Hollis reopened the hearing in the same courthouse where Myra had stood accused. This time, she sat on the front bench with a clean bandage beneath Eliza's brown wool dress. Toby sat beside her, holding Pearl's hand. Jonas stood at the witness rail, not as a man pleading for mercy, but as one giving facts. The red ledger lay open on the judge's desk. Galt had recorded everything because greed loved proof when proof could be used for control. Bribes to Sheriff Russ, payments to frightened homesteaders, forged claims, stolen notices, church money taken to make Myra look guilty. A notation beside Toby Crane's name said, "Boy useful, sister leverage." When that line was read aloud, Toby lowered his head. Myra took his hand under the bench. Judge Hollis cleared his throat. "Miss Bell, this court owes you acknowledgement, not apology." Not yet. Myra had learned to hear what people could afford. The judge continued, "The charges against you are dismissed." A murmur moved through the room. Mrs. Pritchard dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, though Myra suspected the tears were for the discomfort of being wrong in public. Jonas' land claim was restored. The railroad spur would be reviewed by territorial officers. Reuben Galt and Sheriff Russ would be transported under guard. When the session ended, people gathered around Jonas first. Men clapped his back. Women told Lucy how brave her father had been. Caleb Doss accepted praise as if he had personally planned every moment from Genesis onward. Myra stepped toward the side door. She had almost reached it when Mrs. Pritchard called her name. The room quieted. Myra turned. The minister's wife came forward, face pale with effort. "Miss Bell, I spoke cruelly at the supper." "Yes," Myra said. Mrs. Pritchard blinked. A few people shifted. Myra waited. The woman swallowed. "I am sorry." Myra studied her. Forgiveness, she had learned, was not pretending hurt had missed. It was deciding hurt would not own the whole house. "Thank you," Myra said. Mrs. Pritchard looked relieved. "But next time," Myra added, "believe less quickly when a lonely woman is easy to blame." The words landed harder than shouting would have. Mrs. Pritchard nodded. Outside, the wind had softened. The mud in the street shone beneath a clean blue sky. Church bells rang noon, not mournful now, but bright. Toby and Pearl stood near the wagon, uncertain as stray pups. Jonas looked at Myra, They can come to the homestead until we sort something steadier. Myra smiled faintly. We. His ears reddened. It was the first time she had seen Jonas Whitaker embarrassed, and it did something dangerous to her heart. Lucy ran up then and threw her arms around Myra's waist, cheerful of the wound. You are coming home, aren't you? Home. The word frightened Myra more than gunfire. I do not know, she said softly. Lucy pulled back, stricken. Jonas sent his daughter to help Edith with the wagon, then stood beside Myra near the hitching rail. You do not owe us staying, he said. I know, do you? She looked down the street toward the depot. A train was taking water, steam breathing around its wheels. For most of Myra's life, trains had meant leaving before anyone could send her away. A ticket, a bundle, a new town where nobody knew the old accusations. She had survived by staying light enough to disappear. I am good at going, she said. Jonas rested one hand on the saddle horn. I figured. I am not good at being wanted. His voice lowered. You are wanted. She looked at him then. The town noise faded. Hooves, wheels, distant hammering, the hiss of the train. All of it became background to the quiet between them. Jonas did not reach for her. He had learned her fear of being claimed like property, pitied like a stray, rescued like a debt to be repaid. So he simply told the truth and let it stand. Not for your cooking, he said, though the biscuits would start a small war if you left. Not for Lucy, though she loves you. Not because I need saving from grief, and not because you need saving from your past. I want you at that table because when you are there, the house feels honest. Even when you were keeping secrets, Myra, your heart was not false. Her eyes burned. I lied by silence. Yes, I brought danger to your door. Danger was already there. You made us face it. I am poor. So is the farm most months. I have no family. Jonas looked toward Toby and Pearl, then Lucy, then Edith, pretending not to watch from the wagon. That appears to be changing, he said. Myra laughed once, though it broke halfway. He smiled, and the sight of it opened something in him that grief had kept locked too long. They returned to the homestead before sunset. The prairie had begun to green after the rains. Along the creek, cottonwood leaves trembled like small coins. The barn still bore black scars from the fire, but Caleb had already set new beams. Edith had washed the windows. Lucy had placed wildflowers in a jar on the kitchen table. That first evening, Myra stood in the doorway holding a sack of flour, unable to step fully inside. Edith noticed. The older woman came up beside her. Eliza's bowl is on the shelf. Use it when you bake tomorrow, Myra whispered. Are you sure? No, Edith said, but I am willing. Myra nodded. That might be better. Weeks passed. Galt's trial drew men from 3 counties. Sheriff Rusk confessed enough to save his neck from the harshest sentence, which made him hated by criminals and honest men alike. The railroad altered its survey. Jonas kept his creek. Toby began working at the Whitaker place, first as a chore boy, then as something closer to a son, though nobody said it too soon. Pearl's cough eased with warm food, clean blankets, and Doc Hensley's visits paid from the recovered church fund. Lucy taught her letters at the kitchen table, while Myra pretended not to listen and corrected them both from the stove. Mercy Crossing did what towns often do after shame. It tried to cover apology with usefulness. Women brought fabric. Men offered fence posts. Mrs. Pritchard sent sugar with a note that said only, "For the biscuits, if you will allow it." Myra allowed it. One Sunday after service, Jonas asked Myra to walk to the creek. The cottonwood where Eliza once sat had leafed out fully. Beneath it, Jonas had placed a simple bench. Not a shrine, not a forgetting, a place where memory and living could share the shade. Myra stood beside him, hands folded. I loved her, Jonas said. I know I will always love her. I know that too. He turned to her. That love does not make this one smaller. Myra's breath caught. He took something from his pocket. Not a ring, a key, small iron, worn smooth. This was for the pantry, he said. Eliza kept it because Lucy would eat preserves until she made herself sick. After Eliza died, I kept it in my drawer. Did not see reason to use it much. House felt too empty to guard sweetness. He held it out. Myra stared at the key. What is this? She whispered. A question. Her fingers trembled. He continued. Stay as long as you choose. Leave if you must. Marry me only if your heart answers yes, not because gratitude corners you. But know this, you will never again have to earn a place in my home by being useful enough to keep. The creek moved softly over stones. Prairie wind slipped through cottonwood leaves. Mara thought of the courthouse, the money pouch, the burned letters, the terrible weight of silence. She thought of Toby's frightened eyes and Pearl's small hand in hers. She thought of every door that had closed because she had no name anyone valued. Then she thought of Jonas stepping into the aisle, not because she had explained herself, not because he knew the truth, because he believed a quiet woman might be more than the accusation laid at her feet. Mara took the key. Yes, she said. Jonas went very still. To staying, she smiled through tears. To the question, he exhaled as if the whole prairie had been sitting on his chest. When he kissed her, it was gentle and unhurried, with all the patience of a man who understood that love was not a rescue at the edge of a cliff, but a hand held out every day afterward. They married in early summer, under a sky washed clean by morning rain. No grand church crowd pressed close, just Lucy, Toby, Pearl, Caleb, Edith, Doc Hensley, and a few townsfolk brave enough to stand humbly where they had once judged loudly. Mrs. Pritchard made the cake. Mara made the biscuits herself because trust did not mean surrendering good sense. After the vows, Lucy scattered wildflowers until she ran out and began tossing grass. Toby laughed so hard he forgot to look guarded. Pearl wore a blue ribbon in her hair. Edith cried into a handkerchief and denied it to anyone who glanced her way. At dusk, when the guests had gone and the prairie turned gold, Myra stood on the porch of the Whitaker home. Inside, bread cooled beneath a cloth. The pantry key hung on a nail by the stove. Lucy and Pearl slept in the loft after whispering too long. Toby had bedded down in the room off the kitchen, the one once meant for storage, now his until a better room could be built. Edith hummed in the rocking chair, mending a shirt with stitches as stern and dependable as herself. Jonas came to stand beside Myra. The winds lifted the edge of her apron. Far off, a train whistle crossed the evening, no longer calling her away, only reminding her how far she had come. Jonas took her hand. Myra leaned against him, not because she was weak, but because she no longer had to prove she could stand alone. Once, an orphan cook had chosen silence to save someone else, believing the fall belonged only to her. But a widowed homesteader had seen past the shame, past the fear, past the town's cruel hunger for blame. He had stepped forward when everyone else stepped back. And now, beneath the lantern glow of a porch that had finally become home, Maribel Whitaker stood with flower on her hands, love at her side, and no reason left to disappear.